Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of I Like to Read with me, your host, Rachel Polanski. Today, I am very, very excited to be joined by my former professor, my mentor. I was his TA. He's also still a professor at University of Vermont, as well as a writer, researcher, scholar. So Todd McGowan, if you'd like to give our listeners a little bit of an intro beyond that.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to see you.
So glad to have you.
I got my PhD a long time ago from Ohio State, and then
you grew up there, right?
In the Midwest,
yeah. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I stayed a little close to home, and then I lived a little bit in Los Angeles, and I lived a little bit in Texas, which was a sad time for me.
Where in Texas did you live?
I lived in Austin.
Right. You taught there, right?
I didn't tell you. I didn't teach at UT. I taught at Texas State University,
which
was down in San Marcos.
Yeah, that must have been interesting.
Yeah, that was a kind of a sad time. but then I felt like I was from hell into heaven when I got the job.
How did you transition from Texas to University of Vermont? There's such opposites.
So my spouse, Hillary Neroni,
another fantastic professor, writer, scholar.
I think she's fantastic. So she got her PhD in film studies from USC, and then while I was at Texas, she got a 1-year position at University of Vermont. And it's funny because these little job notices come out, and I said to her, maybe it's somebody who's sick, and at the last minute they need a replacement, right, and maybe that person will retire, and then you can get a full-time job. That is exactly what happened.
Perfect.
And then I just came along, and I was totally fine with being a lecturer my whole life, because I thought it'd be great. I wouldn't have to teach as much. I could just teach 1 or 2 classes. But then they were very nice, and they're like, what do you want we're hiring someone in your field. Tell us what you want the ad to read. So I did, and then I got the job. So
they made you write the ad, but then you still had to interview for it?
Yeah. I mean, they allowed me to write the ad, which was weird.
Right.
I could have my input into it. So I didn't get it. But,
if you didn't get it, that would have been pretty disappointing.
That would have been pretty bad. Well, I have to say, so at the time, the woman that would chair the department was Robin Warhol, who I'm friends with, but she did not want me for that position. And actually, they hired 2 people. So Val Roy, I don't know if you know her.
No, I don't know her.
She's also in the department, but she got hired at the same time as me. So The chair was against me, but luckily
yes,
was for me. So yeah, so that was it. And then I was a literature person initially, and then I transitioned into film. And so then I wrote quite a few books just on film. And then I transitioned off into kind of more philosophy. Like I wrote this new book on Hegel recently.
Right.
And I just wrote something on identity politics. So I've kind of shifted slightly away from film, although it's still a great.
Well, the departments are they still combined, sort of? I mean, I know you major separately, but they were so close, and so many of the English classes kind of were filmic. And I mean, it's interesting because, like I said, my boyfriend went to Loyola, Marymount in California, and he has a much more production-based background. And somehow I got through my film major without taking a single production class.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I mean, Lizzie and I, we made Electra, our short film, but we had Shawnice Crawford as our DP. Right. So we had, Lizzie edited it with no experience. We had no production experience. We had no direction experience. We went into it blind. I don't know how to do anything production based. It's interesting because my education was so philosophy and theory based, which I love as a reader and a writer, and it made
it makes sense that you're going to become a writer now.
Hopefully, we'll see. I mean, I always say I'm more of a reader than a writer, but I think that's it gives me I know what a reader likes. Like for listeners of the podcast, I do read about 5 or 6 books a week, and I read so many different things, but I also absorb a ton of TV and movies. So being able to kind of like combine, if I'm able to talk about the movies and the TV and talk about the books, but put my own words to them, which is kind of what we do.
I feel like I'm more of a reader than a writer too, that you say that. So.
It's in like, and there's that quote that it's like, I love having written, but I love having written, but I hate writing, or like, I hate writing, but I love having written, which is like totally how I'm like, I get all these ideas. Then when it's time to Yeah. So if I'd love to know a little, so you've written 10 books?
No,
How
I
many?
think more. I think
More.
like 4.
Goodreads said 10, but they might not have everything up there. So yeah, I'd love to know, like, what was your first book? How did you transition? What inspired the transition beyond just sort of UVM giving you creative freedom? What made you want to become more of a writer?
So my first book was just my dissertation. It was called The Feminine No, and hopefully no one ever has seen a copy.
That one is on Goodreads, I think, or
Is it really?
they at least list it as one of your
Yeah,
works.
yeah. I'm a little embarrassed about that. But then I wrote this. I guess I turned to film. My first film essay was on Toy Story, and then I wrote my real break into film was I saw David Lynch's Lost Highway, and I was like, oh
Hmm.
my god, I have
So
to write.
that was the movie that like really
That was
inspired.
the movie, really. And then I said I have to write something about this, and I wrote it up, and I sent it to a film journal, and I got these responses that were like, this is fine, but you don't really talk about the film as a film. It's like it could be a novel, so you got to include that. So that's when I really thought, well, I got to pay attention to the form
Right.
of the film, and then that I have to say that really changed even the way I teach. So even when I teach film, I pay a lot of attention to the form. And then when I got to UVM, I just got a lot of freedom to do, whatever I wanted. And then my real turn, I think I wrote this book called Enjoying What We Don't Have. And that was really the one where I stopped writing necessarily on film and wrote more just a plain theory book. So, we also have freedom to teach what we want, which is
Which
pretty
is
great.
yeah, that's awesome.
It's pretty great. Like right now, I'm teaching a class on Kafka and paranoid thrillers. So,
Oh, what thrillers are you doing in that one?
well, we're doing all the adaptations of Kafka, but we're also doing like Dark City, Parallax View, um, Steven Soderbergh's film Kafka. I can't think of. What's that Iranian one? The Circle by
Mm,
Panahi. Yeah, so stuff like that.
very
So
cool.
I love the paranoid. 3 Days of the Condor, I think I assigned. So I love those kind of films. So
What other class? I mean, so I graduated in 2016. What other fun classes have you taught since then that I've had to miss out on?
so I always teach this. The one English grad class I teach is just an introduction to theory, and that's going to be my favorite class to
Is that
teach.
the same? Because I took, so my first or my second film class ever was film theory with you. Is that obviously just a more advanced version, or is it
Yeah, it's more
similar?
advanced, and it's not filmically
Oh,
sensitive.
okay. It's just you
Just
see
it's
to
so
analyze everything. Right.
so it's like Freud, Marx,
Right.
feminism. So
Right. So I started out as a film minor. So I majored in psychology and film, double major, somehow eked by with that psychology because the program and the way it's set up at UVM is very different than the film department. And I found
right,
that it was just a lot different than what I wanted. But so I minored in film because they made you minor in something if you wanted a BA. I took Sarah Nielsen's history of television, and that changed
that
my because
switched you. Huh?
that
Yeah,
I was just like, wow, like, because I've always loved film and television. And then
yeah,
I think we watched like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Charlie's Angels, and we did like we had to write like a spec script for The Wire, and like we just did such fun things, and it was such a fun class that I was like, oh wow, like these things, and, we looked at them obviously like the history of television, so in the
right. Yeah,
historical context, and then I had to take your class as a minor. I mean, because UVM, requires like you have to take film theory and
right,
blah blah blah, and then
right.
I got to the point where I was like, oh, I've just been taking all these film classes for fun, like I should just major in it. And then I walked with FTS at graduation because I was like, psychology department, like I don't talk to anybody from the psychology
But you
department.
kept the double major.
Yeah, so I did have the because I figured I went through enough of
You
it,
might as
but
well. Yeah.
right, but there, I mean, some of those classes were so hard. I mean, some of the film classes were really difficult too. I mean, that's especially your intro to film theory as someone who had only taken one other film class, and
I
I think
know it's hard. Yeah.
I was one of the younger kids in it too, students in it too. Yeah, so that was our initial class, and then so we talked about it. I remember Deleuze. We read one of
Did you read?
his
I
books.
think we read
Right,
both
we
of
did.
Deleuze's film books.
Those
Yeah.
were like our primary texts, and I
Yeah.
remember I wrote my like first real film theory paper on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which is always I did queer theory,
Oh yeah.
and wrote about that.
Did I teach that Jack Halberstam book on? I
Yeah,
think I did.
that's what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
used for that. And
The
then
Art of Failure or something.
there was that woman who came. She had like written something about Gossip Girl or something. I forget her name.
Oh,
She,
Mari Rudy.
yeah, I think we read a little bit of her stuff too.
Yeah.
And then that was my introduction to Zizek too, and philosophy. Yeah. So so Sarah's class was great because that kind of gave me like a sociocultural perspective of looking at it. And then your class was great because it just introduced theory and all this philosophy and sort of just like the things that interested me about psychology. Do you have like
able to get
yes. So do you have a particular sort of theory or lens that you find yourself sort of or unconsciously drawn to, or one that, you know, speaks to you more than others? I mean, I think I kind of know the answer, but
yeah, you probably know. Yeah, I mean, even
for those who don't.
You're used to the word unconscious, right? Like, I mean, very much.
It's funny though, because I've had to, certain people, like I know just offbeat that they won't get it. If I say unconscious, they'll be like, oh, you mean like in a coma? So I'm like, I'm like, do I just say subconscious? But I remember with you that you were very much like, no, it's the unconscious mind.
I know. I get really upset about that. Yeah, definitely psychoanalysis. Like almost all of my books, even my book on Hegel has one chapter about how Hegel would have been so much better if he couldn't have because he was dying.
right.
He had read psychoanalysis. So yeah, so it's always been it's sort of so it's a little interesting for me to teach classes like film theory or general theory classes because I have to try to be egalitarian,
right.
Like really push the other theory as if I am invested in it, because you never know what the students are going to glom onto, like they could like whatever and not what you like, and that's
totally
fine.
And you have to teach, because that's the whole point of theories. I mean, it's different lenses to look at things. There's not necessarily like a right or wrong answer
like
for it.
That class, like I really am against Deleuze, but I think I taught it in a kind of
I didn't pick up. I mean, you might have said at times like, I don't like him, but it didn't feel
but
totally
like we spent like 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, it was the majority, I think, of a lot of the class. I just remember those quizzes though were very, even as someone who did the readings, they were hard. I mean, I'm much more, I like to say, I think in the gray area. I don't think in the black and white. And so even with this podcast, I felt like I have to pull up the books I'm talking about, because then I'll be like, this person's name or this person's whatever. They were hard. And it was so funny because then it's the contrast of the class was so enjoyable and my favorite thing, and then the quizzes came, and I don't even want to know, my grade in the class is not great, but that's also, it just goes to show that the number you get on a quiz or the grade you get in a class, it doesn't matter.
No, it's meaningless. I totally agree.
So dumb. So that was the first class I took with you, and then I think the next one was teen films and SART, which to date has remained the best class I've ever taken. And I still talk about
Rachel, it. I'm so glad you said that, because I've been thinking about doing it again.
Oh, it was the best thing I've ever done.
Okay. Yeah, because it's interesting because I'm sort of adjacent to SART. I like him, but I'm not totally. I really like him, actually. But he's not psychoanalytic, obviously.
Right.
But I thought that really just worked well with those films.
It was so perfect.
It was such a great combination of a hard, obviously very hard book, but the films were all so enjoyable that I thought it kind of balanced out nicely.
And we had a really nice mix of like ones that were popular and that everyone kind of knew, and then ones that were like there was, what was that one, like Pump Up the Volume, that Christian Slater one. Like I had never seen that, and that was great. And I think it was also so fun because I just, as someone who loves teen films in general, like then the fact that we got to write our like essays and our other like little things like about any teen film. So like the classes, I think you should definitely do it again. That one was.
There've been additional teen films too. Like there've been
totally. Like what? I mean, I'm trying to think what has come out in the past.
Well, there was that one last year about the intellectual girls. I forget what the name of it was.
Blockers.
No, but Blockers is a great.
Blockers was one great.
I think Blockers is one of the greatest.
I laughed out loud, so I think it was great.
I mean, we watch Blockers about once every 3 or 4 months.
It's so good. I mean, what is it? You okay? Or you like that gets in John Cena with the beard. I mean, he's great.
The chugging is like amazing. Yeah,
it's a fantastic film. The 3 intellectual, like, was it teen girls?
Yeah, it's written by a woman, and it's 2 girls who are kind of.
Let's see. It was last year. Teen.
Yeah, films. It was last year. It was not 2019. I'm pretty sure.
2019. Let's see. Oh, Booksmart. That one.
Booksmart. That was it.
Yeah, I liked that. That one felt like very sophisticated.
Yeah,
Taking
I didn't
oh,
love it, but it's just part of this whole. There's just been a lot more, like
there's
there.
one that just came out called Unpregnant, which is like an abortion road trip movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is so good, and it's
Is
just
it
again,
really?
it's like a road trip movie. These two young girls, but one of them's 17, so she's in Missouri and she has to travel to Albuquerque to get her abortion, and her friend goes with her, and that just came out on HBO Max, and I really liked that one.
Oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll watch that tonight.
Yeah, Unpregnant. It's
Oh, Unpregnant.
Unpregnant. It's
Okay.
so, and one of the girls in it, I don't know if you saw 17 again.
I did, yeah.
She's the best friend from it, the blonde, cute little girl. She's been in a few other things.
Okay.
Everybody Wants Some remains kind of like my. You can actually have a poster.
I know you like that.
That has always been my.
I don't like him.
University of Texas. You don't like Linklater?
No, I don't. I mean, I've liked a couple, but I don't. He did Boyhood, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
Oh, well, that's different. I like more of the Dazed and Confused. Everybody Wants Some sort of like slice. I mean, I guess Boyhood is slice of life, but
aren't they all the same though in that sense? Like they're not plot driven,
right? That's problematic for some people.
I'm just a bourgeois, I just have to have the plot.
I also I have a 10 Things I Hate About You poster there as well, so I'll redeem myself. That's another one.
Yeah, I love that. No, I think it's a limitation on my part. I think that I just can't.
It's valid though. I get it. It also, I think it takes place at UT, so that might be why, or maybe Texas State. Something, yeah, it's too dramatic for you. No, Sartre, yeah, because I was familiar with the name Sartre, but as as an ignorant 20-year-old or whatever, I didn't know anything about him, and so it really just existentialism in general just gave so much meaning to my own personal feelings, which was wonderful. And then to also like look at these movies from my childhood, and I know especially like Fast Times at Ridgemont High when I was younger, was like one of my favorite movies, and to then just like look at that academically, it was so, and beyond just like a theory, like to really look at these things in such a specific way to understand like bad faith and all other Sartre things. And I remember you always did a trivia at the end of the class, and that was I won the trivia in the class. Yeah, and that was like my crowning. I felt so, because I never again not very good with names and minute details, but that one I just I knew everything from that.
I'm so happy for you. That's great. I hear more about that trivia game than I do about.
I know you put more work into that than anything else.
You have no idea. I spent
and people. It was the best day. I took it very seriously.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of students write, "Why are we wasting class time on this?" That really hurt my feelings. But
no, those kids are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really that's helpful actually, because I'm thinking about teaching again, and I love Sartre, and I think you're right that age, I think existentialism really.
Oh, it really personal introspection was. I personally think I've grown a lot since I moved, to Los Angeles right after I graduated and went from a city of 40,000 people to being thrown into this out of nowhere. But I think having sort of those existential and Sartre ideas inside of me, really helped me look at the world. And again, teen movies too, because I think it also brings gravitas to a genre that people, often underlook and, dismiss it. And even with, I think, Unpregnant is definitely on par with Booksmart in terms of being very smart. It plays with genre. It's definitely, it features teens, but it's very adultish. But then there's also certain teen movies. It's funny. It's really good. It's just it's funny, but it's heartwarming, but it's not too ugh, this is cheesy. And even though it's about abortion, it's not super political and in your face. It's, so it's really good. Just let me know what you think. But I think it's hard. There haven't been, we were just struggling to think of, there's Booksmart. There's been a few other teen movies. I feel
that one that came out during the class, remember? And I got money.
The Duff. Yeah, we all went to go see that. I liked that one a lot. That was.
I liked that too. I thought cute. That was underrated. Yeah.
And that was also so fun with the class. I mean, if movie theaters are back to normal and stuff is in production, you could take them on a few that was so fun.
Yeah, that was really fun. Do you know this one? I don't know if I showed it, called The Way, Way Back.
I watched it. You didn't show it, but that one I like to watch.
I think that's really a great. I don't know if it's a teen, because he's a very young.
Right. That's what's hard too, is because it's there are so many films that feature young characters, like The Piano. You wouldn't call that a teen, but it's they have younger characters in them. So it's
I think
certain.
that don't you think the definition is it has to be a film struggling with this problem of
Well, they
popularity like
call it
that?
also the Bildungsroman, the sort of
Yeah, yeah,
coming
yeah,
of age. I read
yeah.
throwback term. I hated Great Expectations. I'm not a Dickens fan, but he's
Really? See, that I used to totally agree with you, but now, but my friend here, Sarah Alexander, who teaches, and my friend I know at Chicago, Anna Kornblue, they're both really into
Mhm.
Dickens, and they convinced me, and I reread a ton of them, and I liked
What
it.
convinced you?
Well, I started out with our mutual friend, and then I read Great Expectation. I even liked that, and when I was a kid, I hated it, like in high
Maybe
school.
that's what it is because I think I had a really terrible English teacher. I hated high school just in general.
Yeah,
I
me
don't, and the
too.
part of that I think was I didn't have good teachers.
Me too.
Because in a lot of and I'm a big advocate of contemporary literature. And I think that a part of the problem is a lot of things that we're reading, while they're great and they're important to discuss,
Yeah,
kids are not going to relate to them. And so I think that's why I was with Great Expectations is like, that we had a quiz that was like you have to identify who said what quotation,
yeah. How do you
and
do
like
that?
and I'm like, I'm sorry, I was a freshman in high school. So stuff like that I think really made me just like totally turned off by it. But there are certain like archetypes, like it is sort of like the archetypal Bildungsroman. I know Miss Havisham is like a huge
Right,
archetype, and then there's sort of like the Estella and the heartbreaking. So it is very formative and important. But I
right.
think that there's we can also just to segue into another class I took with you, Shakespeare and film. Like there's a lot,
Yeah,
about the adaptation component of it. It's also, the original text. How much does that stand on its own? But it's different to read it as a 14-year-old versus, even now or later. So maybe I'll give him a little more credit, but
yeah. I have to say I agree with you in the sense that I think it's actually an old person's
it's
fiction,
it's
right? Like,
not it's not meant for high schoolers at
no, I
all.
agree. I mean, I think you shouldn't even read it in high school, really,
No, no,
and
no.
barely in college. Like, I think even I'm not sure if in college I would have been ready
No,
for
I
a.
don't think it's the sort of text that needs to be picked apart academically until it's like a graduate level text to
It
really pick
is. I
apart.
think that's really true. I mean, the one that's just pure kind of enjoyment, but even still, I think it's for older
Christmas
people.
Carol.
No, I was going to say David Copperfield, but
Oh,
the
yeah,
problem is
that
it's like
or
900.
Oliver Twist. Did he write that?
This is good. Yeah, I mean it's good, and I mean that's really so that's very early. So he hadn't yet kind of developed to
I
do
mean, I
his.
just like the musical more than
Yeah,
anything.
of course, of course, of course.
So we have him to thank for that.
Yeah, that's true. We do. But on Shakespeare, I have to say I love those. I mean, I love Wells, and so for me, I love the three Wells films that are
Yeah, that
based on.
class was amazing too because it was so great to combine, literature and film, and to see the different adaptations and the way that we have these super formative texts. I think Tony was the one who told me in our interview that Shakespeare, of course, is like the number one artist whose work has been reproduced the
Right, right.
most
Yeah.
for film. So yeah, his stuff is crazy. In that class, we started with Wells. We did, or no, we started with Hamlet. So we did
You
um
did the Branagh Hamlet, I think, right?
yes, and I remember, humble brag again, but when we took our midterm, I made the point that he was writing that sort of like appendix was part of his authorship because he's so full of himself that this supplement to the film is part of his larger
Right, right.
authorship. And then I got those Shakespeare insult band-aids from Barnaby.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great.
What was it like?
Andrew's a great friend of
Yeah,
mine.
what
So
was
it's
it
fun.
like to teach? So that was the only class I took that was sort of co-taught. What was it like to teach with someone else versus to have like total control over a class?
I think it's just fun because I love the times when I'm in there. Problem was I was really sick that semester. I don't know if you remember, but I missed like
Right,
almost
I do.
all the
Yeah,
time when he was teaching. But I have to say it's so fun because you rarely get to sit in a class and just you hear someone else
right.
say you can chime in. I just taught. Oh, this is the class you missed last year. I think that was last fall. I taught a class with Andrew on Star Trek,
Oh,
and
that
it
sounds
was
super
called
fun too.
Sex and Society in Star Trek, and that was just the best because we both love
You both are huge Trekkies, I'm
the
sure.
original
Yeah.
Star Trek, and so we just had. I have to say that was just the most fun I've ever had teaching. Like it was amazing, and again, like he's a little more of a historicist than me. So I don't know if you remember this in the Shakespeare thing, like he would bring in like
yeah
how it was produced at the time and that kind of thing. And I just really don't care about that. But I think some of his analyses are really like he has certain things he has picked up about, like just about Hamlet, that no one else has ever picked up. So I feel, and sometimes he'll tell me while we're playing tennis, and I'm like, wow, I get this insight no one else has ever gotten. And it's just, we're just playing tennis.
And he has like these such profound thoughts.
Yeah, because he's spent so much time with those texts that he
right. So he's like very Shakespeare background focused, right? Shakespearean, yes.
Went to Princeton, studied Shakespeare there. So
wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I loved doing that.
Yeah, that class was very fun.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing that again too.
And you could bring in some, because you only, there's so much that you could do. I mean, we didn't even, you should do She's the Man, which is a perfect 12th Night adaptation and a teen film.
I know. You know what I would do, I think, Rachel, if I did it again, I would have to say I'd cut the Wells, because to do that
too much.
Well, to do the Falstaff, you have to do both. You have to do a couple of those plays, and then so that takes a lot of time. So, and their histories are. So I was thinking I would do like Julius Caesar, and like teach She's the Man, which would be great. Like I think we did. Did we do?
We did 10 Things I Hate About You. That was like the only more contemporary one.
We didn't do Taming of the Shrew, though, right?
No, we did. Taming. Okay. Well, because that's 10 Things I Hate About You is Taming of the Shrew.
Right.
But I don't know if we read the text for that one though. It might, because that was like the end of the class to that.
Right. And then we did. But did we do the play for She's the Man?
No, we didn't do 12th Night, which is one of my personal favorites.
There's a little thing. Andrew thinks that 12th Night is Shakespeare's best play.
I kind of think so. I mean,
you agree?
I don't know. Part of me loves Romeo and Juliet because it's classic, but I feel like that's, the basic answer. We didn't do Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which I know is popular. We did it, but Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet is fantastic. I think it's one of the best Shakespeare adaptations. No, we didn't do that one. We didn't do Taming of the Shrew. We did do Midsummer Night's Dream, I think.
I think so, yeah.
We did like the Stanley Tucci one, maybe.
Yeah, which is not great.
Yeah. No. Then we did Coriolanus.
Coriolanus. That was. I probably would not do that again. But
we did King Lear, and then we did what was the Kurosawa movie? The one.
Yeah,
Ron.
And we did Macbeth because we did the one with Patrick.
Right. Yes. There was another Macbeth that came out somewhat recently.
I still like the Polanski one. I think it's pretty good.
I haven't seen it. My name knows. We're not related. We're not related. He's an I. I'm a Y.
I know.
I always get that. I tell people though when they want to spell my name, I'm like, it's a Y, not an I, not related. It would be. I mean, I don't know how I would feel about that. I mean, on the one hand, it would be like kind of cool, but if you
but he's a kind of
separate, you can't separate the art from the author anymore. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the J.K. Rowling controversy stuff. And did you see that the latest thing is, so her new book is about a cis man who dresses up as a woman and kills people.
Wow.
And so I'm like, was this all just a publicity stunt? Like,
sounds like it, doesn't
it's very, very weird. And I mean, I was not like a huge Harry Potter fan. Like, I like Harry Potter, but now I just feel like I literally can't even look at the stuff without being like, this woman who's still alive and preaching her ideas to so many people is profiting off of this stuff and clearly has very problematic beliefs about people that she has no qualms about stating publicly.
Right. She's not apologetic. It's interesting because I think once the artist is dead, it seems
like Orson Welles sometime, he was a little problem. No, he was great now. But even like Kevin Spacey, like can I watch The Usual Suspects? I don't know. Like it feels a little weird because he's still very much alive. But then there's, the people who are dead. It's like, well,
I know it seems like with death you get forgiveness or something, or people don't care as much. I think.
Right. Well, I mean, then there's always people saying, "Oh, well, Gandhi beat his wife," and blah blah blah. It's like, I mean, stuff like that is delicate.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it's a question that doesn't really have an easy answer. Right.
But it is, yeah, it's not with J.K. Rowling. It's interesting because she's very much alive and she's very much such a part of the, like, Harry Potter is one of the largest I mean, even like Tolkien had some problematic
Right,
views,
right.
but
Well, he was an arch conservative. Like,
right. He
now
was
there's
also 100 plus, things were different. Society was different. I think part of it, what it is like in the 21st century when we are so, especially Harry Potter is, probably a more liberal touted
right,
franchise. So for someone to that vehemently oppose such a, like, what I think of as like a non-questionable issue and to sort of like
right.
state them so definitively is problematic.
No, it's a problem. I think that's true, and I do think it's interesting that there's like, I think, don't you think that politically almost the opposition between people that like Tolkien and people that like Harry Potter, like those two worlds, it's almost like one is more conservative and the other is more
I mean,
liberal.
I don't know. I wonder if part of it is like age, where like,
It's age, yeah.
Harry Potter, confession also, I had never seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies until the past 6 months, a year ago. And
You never read those books.
I never read them. I knew about them. So like my boyfriend showed them to me. He also showed me all the Star Wars. I hadn't seen any of those.
Wow, you hadn't
So
seen
I'm very, we haven't seen the most recent three, but we watched the original and then the 90s one.
classics.
Yeah, the classics.
Well,
And
then
I
he
was,
watched the 90s ones.
yeah, we just haven't watched the JJ, the newest ones. He's
Right.
seen them, but I haven't. And that stuff, I'm like, wow, now I finally get it. Sort of, you see
Yeah.
all these like memes and stuff on the internet. People, it's just such a part of pop culture that I was so hesitant to not be a part of, but not for any like political reasons. Just kind of where I was like,
Why do I have to do
why
that?
do I? And now I get it. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I've seen
Well,
these.
I don't know. I always kind of have these little pockets of things. I'm like, why? I don't want to do what everybody else is
Right,
doing.
that's kind of how I felt, and then I was like, okay, now I get it. But also, I liked them. I think I like Lord of the Rings more, obviously. But I think also just as a testament to cinema, that is just like the fact that they shot the whole thing at like once, and that it's so long, and that they did it. I haven't seen The Hobbit though. I've heard that that's not worth my
Not as
time.
good. No.
No.
Yeah.
And then, so I also took with you, what was it, 1960s to contemporary films. And I will never forget, you opened that class with, would you rather be shot during a screening of The Dark Knight Rises or Trainwreck? Uh,
Did I really start with that?
to an introduction class where a lot of the people did not know you. And that forever, that's how I like talk about you. I'm like, yeah, I had this crazy professor.
What did people say?
I think there was just like at first like an awkward silence, and then I think it was an interesting question though, because it's like, would you rather be watching something that because I think we thought of it sort of as like Trainwreck bad, dark.
Right.
Is it Dark Knight Rises or
Dark
just
Knight? No, I think it was just
Dark Knight,
Knight, right?
okay, or Dark Knight. And so sort of it's like would you rather be enjoying it and to have that sort of experience, or would you rather already be sort of in misery and be like, I can be put out of it? That I thought that was just that stuck in my mind. That class, I forget. So I don't even remember what we watched. I remember specifically we watched, what was that Malcolm McDowell movie?
Clockwork?
No, I know that one. What is one word is the title? He's at a boarding school.
Oh,
If, yes.
If, yeah.
That one I
Not
really
a very
liked.
good movie, I don't think.
I liked it. I
You
didn't think
liked
it was,
it?
I thought it was, I hadn't seen it. I mean, it's not the best of his movies, but
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting start to the class. And then
Yeah.
I know we did Out of Sight at the end, towards the end.
I
That was
love Out
good.
of
I
Sight.
like that. That one was really good. One of
And we did that Gina Davis one. Kiss Goodnight.
The Long Kiss Goodnight, right?
Yeah.
I liked that one too. I like
I
Gina
like that a
Davis.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. What else? We did Cassavetes, of course, Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
Killing a Chinese Bookie. Yeah.
What else did we do? That one was interesting because I was TAing and also taking the class, which I don't know if you're allowed to, I don't know how we were able to do that,
I
but
don't
somehow
either.
we
But
were.
now they make much more allowances for that now. So
of
you were
course.
kind of a trendsetter.
I mean, because why not? Especially, I was a senior, so it was just a requirement that I had to take.
Right.
And I mean, there's no difference. It's not like I'm going to get a special advantage or anything because it's not like math or whatever where you can memorize the answers.
Right. No, I thought that seemed like a good.
It makes sense. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
happens sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's good that they're doing that now.
Yeah.
Are your TAs still like work study based? Is that how it works? Or
Yeah, although that's what I'm just saying, that they now have added this TA that you can get credit for the class while
oh,
you're
okay.
TAing. So you don't have to have work study, you can still.
Right. So you can, oh, that's awesome
So
too.
that's pretty good. And I've had a couple students that have done that, although they haven't held a candle to you as a TA, I
Oh,
have to say.
I remember too that class. So I was I was that one, and then I was it 1930s to 1960s.
Yeah.
That was an interesting
I
class as
love
well.
teaching that. We've now changed it so
Are
the
the years
early
different?
yeah, the years are different. So the film, because silent got too small of a, it became
Yeah, I
too
was got
small.
how yeah, how do you teach a whole class on that now? That's
Right. So
hard.
now it's up to 1945 and then 45 to the
Okay.
present. So there's only
Oh, so there's just two. Well, because
yeah,
that was how it kind of used to be. I think they added that 1960s to
that's
2000s
right.
just for a
That's
couple
right.
years.
Right. That's right.
Um,
So now I really like teaching the 45 to the present, although I can't do Kane. And I love,
mm,
as you know, I think Citizen
yes.
Kane's the greatest thing. So I don't get to teach that. But that's a nice class. I start with the film noir, then I do an Italian neorealism, and then kind of go
That's hard
through it.
though to fit that all
It's a
in
lot,
one
yeah, because
semester.
I got to do French New Wave,
But yeah,
obviously.
like what do you end with?
Uh, I usually end with something really like I did. Do you know this film by Todd Haynes, Carol?
Yeah,
You didn't
I don't
like
know how
it?
I feel. I liked it. I don't know if I loved it though.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So I
had
did
mixed feelings
that. I
about it.
ended with that. I like him a lot, generally.
What else has he directed?
He did Safe, and then he did Far
Right.
From Heaven, which I think is
Mm,
his greatest one. Is Julian Moore. Julian Moore's in Safe too.
she's a wonderful actor.
I tend to do like a Robert Altman one, like maybe Shortcuts or something. I always do a Wong Kar-wai,
Mhm.
and I do some Iranian thing. So
Oh, so you bring because is there still also the global cinema class that you have
yeah,
to
but
take?
right, but I try to do about half global, half.
Right, you don't want to have it all be
Yeah,
American.
yeah. So I do an Iranian, a French. I tend to do. Last year I did Black Girl. Do you know this
Yeah,
film?
we watched that for in Hung. So I Hungju. I
Hyunju
took
Park.
her worlds. Yeah, and in that one, I will always remember we saw Breaking the Waves. So I was introduced to Lars von Trier, and that
Yeah.
then I watched the Bjorn one. I forget what it's. Dancer in the Dark.
It's in the dark, yeah.
So like I love horror. I love freaky and disturbing stuff. That one, like it's like the weird, uncanny, everyday stuff that freaks me
That
out.
got you.
She's like,
Yeah.
she's wrongfully arrested for a crime she didn't commit. It ends with her singing, but she's being hung, and they tell her that like her son is gonna have an eye surgery even though he's not, and it's like she has it's like super dark but
It's really
super
dark.
like
Yeah.
that one that's has spoiler alert, but that has really that kind of thing sticks with me
You're supposed
more
to say
than
spoiler alert
I know.
before.
I realized that as I was saying it, and then I was like, well, maybe it makes more sense at the end than the middle.
Yeah. Did
But
do you like Von Trier?
I do because, like it's uncomfortable. Like I don't know. I haven't seen everything that he's done. I
What
haven't
about
seen.
Melancholia? Have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen Melancholy. The
Yeah.
one that I want to see is the one that's the other part of that trilogy. So it's like Breaking the Waves, Dancer in the Dark, and then there's one about a group of friends who all like go out to dinner and pretend to be mentally challenged.
Oh, I don't know
Something
that.
like that's the third part of
Okay.
the and then I watched his most recent one, The House That Jack Built, which came out like a couple of years ago with Matt
Yeah.
Dillon. That was pretty good. It was a little bit more conventional, as conventional as he can be. But no, and then she had us
This is
watch
the sex one?
the what's Antichrist?
No,
No,
Nymphomaniac.
Nymphomaniac. I've seen parts of it. See, sometimes I feel like he's like a little bit too ridiculous for no
Yeah.
reason. Like I
I
get
found that
it.
film very tedious. I
I
didn't
didn't
want
know.
to.
I didn't. I think Breaking the Waves and Dancer in the Dark there, which I think are some of his earlier things. Like those are in like the 90s.
Yeah,
Those ones I liked a lot better because they're like
I agree.
his more recent films I think make you uncomfortable, but it's so obvious, and I like the subtle uncomfort where
Yeah,
it's
I
like
agree.
where her husband, I think Breaking the Waves, spoiler alert, her husband is paralyzed, and then she goes
Right.
out and just has sex with a bunch of other different men, but she's her internal longing. I'm like, yeah, that's maybe objectively less scary than someone getting their nails pulled off and heads cut off and whatever. But I'm like, that's what makes me uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I think he should go back to his earlier roots.
Declining. I
Yeah.
agree with that. I totally. In fact, my favorite film by him, I think, is one of his earliest one called Zentropa.
I don't know if I've seen
I think
that.
it was called Europa, and another also was another
Mhm.
title. But I really like that film, and I think there's certain directors, don't you think, that they like
They
early
start off
on,
strong,
they
yeah.
start off like, who I really think this about is Paul Thomas Anderson. He, like, Hard Eight, great movie. Boogie Nights, very good movie.
Right. And then
And then it's just like steadily down. And then we get to the last thing was this terrible Phantom Thread, which
yeah,
I thought,
I didn't see it, but I don't think I need to.
oh, I just thought it was unbearable. I just had a friend of mine who's like she's like a very high brow film goer.
And she likes it.
Loves it. And she said to me, didn't you just love, what's your theory about Phantom Thread? And I went back, I'm like, I don't even have a theory because
I don't
just
like
it was really boring.
What did you think about Parasite? Did you like Parasite?
I love Parasite.
I love Parasite too. I thought it was very deserving of Best Picture.
I agree. I think it's one of the few times, if it's true that they get it right once every 10 years, then that was our.
No, I think they got it right with Moonlight too. The Moonlight La La Land. You think La La Land deserved more than Moonlight?
Oh God, no! I hated La La Land.
Well, I think if that's what it came down to, I mean, that was the year. Was that the year that Three Billboards came out too? No, that was the year after.
Yeah, I think that was out there
because I really liked that movie that year.
No,
it might have been the year. I don't know. You think they got it wrong? Yeah. And what was last? Shape of Water? That was wrong. That was definitely wrong. That was
one thing there. That was, what was up against Shape of Water was a great film, Get Out.
Yes, and Sean worked on that one. Shout out to Sean again. He worked on that was like his first big one, and he has like original art from the film. Like he has a whole book of art. I love that film, and I think have you seen Us, his follow up?
Yeah, great.
That was great too.
I think Us might be better, frankly.
I think Us is like there's a little more to unpack. I think that Get Out is very straightforward. And I think also Get Out launched like a whole sort of new genre of then like Black horror and like sort of, spinning it on its head. There's a new movie that just came out called Antebellum, which I've heard is actually like pretty bad because
I heard that's bad too.
Because of the whole thing is like, is she a slave that went back in time? Oh no, it's actually the present day. And there's just these people who like to reenact antebellum stuff, but they don't actually say anything about it beyond that. Like they just give that surface value.
Isn't there also a sequel to Candyman coming out?
But that's supposed to Sean again. Sean's working because he works with Jordan Peele, and so Jordan Peele is producing that. That's supposed to be really good, though.
Yeah, I heard
it's supposed to be sort of, it like takes the story, which I watched it for. I took Tony's American Horror Film class, and we watched it for that class.
Was that directed by a Black director initially? I think not.
I don't think so. And I mean, it's it is problematic in its depiction of race,
sure,
of course. Yeah. So I think this film is kind of trying to sort of, talk about gentrification and reworking that film. And this one is directed by a Black director, a female Black director.
Right.
And that was supposed to come out soon, but now I don't know.
I just got a thing from our local theater and it said October.
The Roxy.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it is. I mean, because we're not open in Los Angeles. So I don't know. Like I want to see Tenet. I want to see, there's like I have a list on my phone that I'm like, I don't even know when some of these are coming out.
Are they shooting again in Hollywood?
Yes and no. Like I think they have been doing some stuff. They've just been, yes, actually they are, because I've seen that like some network sitcoms that normally, like I follow the people on Instagram. So I just see that they're back to shooting, but they're it's going to, TV is going to be different. But I feel like there's so many like streaming shows that are out now. I have to tell you, the best show that you should check out that I watched at the beginning of quarantine is called Black Sails, and it's about the golden age of piracy.
Oh, wow.
Is amazing. Like
piracy, like actual pirates?
Like golden age piracy. It's the prequel to Treasure Island.
Okay.
It is amazing. Like Captain Flint is...
What's it on?
It's on Hulu. It was on Stars, but it's on Hulu now. So if you have either of those, there's 4 seasons. And it's the prequel to Treasure Island. So it's about how Long John and Captain Flint meet. It's about like Nassau Island and sort of the struggle between like colonial England and the pirates to reclaim the island. It's super like historically accurate. My boyfriend said it was better than Game of Thrones. Okay. So which I haven't watched either.
I haven't seen that either. What about this? Somebody, I had the weirdest. So a student emailed me and said, "Can you watch this new Charlie Kaufman film and talk to me?"
Oh, I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Yeah, do you like it?
So I read the book, and I liked the book a lot. And then I watched this, and I liked it, but I think the performances were fantastic. I think that everyone who you saw it. I'm assuming, right?
I did
Oh,
not
no,
see
no,
it.
you haven't. Okay, so the performances are great. I think it then takes a slightly more abstract deviation from the ending of the book, which some people could like. I find it like a bit gratuitous.
Okay.
But I think it's worth it. The performances are really fantastic. I think the first half of the film is really great. It gets a little bit too weird in the second half. But I also read his book that he just came out with a few months ago called Ant Kind. That's
Yeah,
like a 700-page novel that he wrote. So
that's right.
he's like killing it this summer. That one's really, I liked the book better than I like this
Oh, you
movie.
did? Okay.
It's really,
Because
it's weird, but it's good.
okay, okay. Because I did not. So I loved Eternal Sunshine of the
Of
Spotless
course.
Mind.
Anomalisa though is not I don't know. What do you think of John Malkovich? Do you like John Malkovich?
Well, that's pretty good. I don't. What I don't like is Synecdoche, which is the one he wrote and directed. So I'm a little wary of a film that he has total
Right.
control.
I mean, that's where I think the problem is I think because the adaptation and the text it's based on is great. And I think without these performances, like everyone in also the girl's role in the film is much bigger than it is in the novel. But I think, I mean, it's hard because it's like, it almost feels like he's just doing stuff just to do stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, what is the point? Like, you
Right.
understand the point of it, but it's like a little bit too much. But it's got, yeah, Jesse Plemons, who's like been in a bunch of TV shows. Toni Collette, she's a great actor.
Yeah, she's great.
So I mean, it's definitely, it's worth a watch. Like it'll leave you questioning some things, but it's also, it's on Netflix, it's free. Why
Right.
not? I do.
Right.
So
Is
are
it
movie
long?
theaters open in Vermont though?
Yeah, I guess they are now. I'm not going to them because
The rock.
I have asthma, so it's a
No,
little.
it's still risky.
Yeah.
It's not. That's, I mean, even if they were open here, I don't know if I would
Yeah.
go. But I used to go I would go like every weekend at
I
least.
know
Like
we did
it's
too. We
all
just
I
it was like it was like a religion. Like it
totally
was.
exactly. And like, before I started dating my boyfriend, I literally would just take myself to the movies on the weekends. And even when he was away or something, like I have no problem going by myself.
I don't either. I love going to the movies by myself.
Because I'm
I just
also like, I'm not going to talk to anybody during the movie. It's just me. And then I want time to process it after I see it anyways. So I don't really need to see it with anybody unless you're doing something after. But just to meet someone at the movies, I'm like,
yeah, I know. And I even find, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes like Hiller and I talk right afterward always. And I often think like I need a little more time to really
me
say
too.
something smart. Otherwise
Otherwise,
I'm
I'm just like, oh yeah, that was good. Or
right.
like,
That's kind of an abstract, nonsensical statement, right? Like I
right.
always do that. Oh, I liked
I
it.
remember you always said interesting is like the worst word that you can
I,
say.
I know, but I think right away it's hard to say anything better than that.
Totally. Like you just need to absorb it. Like, I mean, something
I
like,
mean, even I have to say, even I've gone to movies a couple times with Slavoj Žižek, and even he, right afterward, all he can say is, "Oh, it's good."
right.
Like
He can't just, yeah.
yeah.
So how did you guys meet? You're friends with Slavoj. How'd you guys meet? How did you
Well,
become friends?
Hillary took a class with him at the University of Michigan while I was in Texas. So she left.
Oh,
She
okay.
was writing her dissertation, went up there, took a class with him, got to know him, and then I don't know, we just kept in contact. And then I've invited him.
Yeah, I got to hear him a couple times.
Right. And I've invited him maybe like 6 times, something, 7 times to Vermont. And then we've gone down, like if he's talking in Boston, he'll say, "Do you want to come on down
Yeah.
and like have dinner or something?" So we've just had a long, and then I don't know why he asked me to do this, but he asked me to be the co-editor for a series of books that he was
Oh,
editing.
very exciting. Is that
So
out
my book
right now? Is that
it's
out?
out. Yeah, it's been going for like 10 years. So.
Oh, okay. Are you part? Violence is the one that we read for your class, but you're not a co-editor of that one, are you?
No. Nothing he writes, just
Oh,
books
okay.
that
Just
are
that
from
he
other people that
got it.
isn't. We just did this book series.
Well,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that Violence
I mean, the
book.
"Cut the Balls" song, also another great moment. Like
Yeah,
that
that
one
was a
is
great
forever.
moment.
That is one of the best parody videos like I've ever seen. And it's so
I think it
smart.
really, if you know him too, it's
Right.
really fun.
It's a great impression, but yeah, like all the concepts in it. It's like, I'm going to rape your
I know. I have to say, our twin boys,
You
so they
told
were,
us that they learned the dance, right?
I know they learned the dance. They would sing that whole song, and they would go to school and they would go cut them. I'm like, you can't
Oh, you
say that.
can't. Other kids do not need to. No, it's an adult
But
song.
because they knew him, they've known him since they
That's
were.
so. He's like Uncle Slavoj.
Yeah, they've known him since they were so little. So when they saw that, they were like, "This is amazing." And
It's the funniest thing.
they used to tell their friend. They'd go to school. They'd tell their friends. They were like really young. They go, we know the most famous philosopher in the world. Therefore, we're like, you're ridiculous. You don't know
I
anybody.
mean, he could be who even is the most famous philosopher in the world right
It's
now?
maybe him, or I mean, maybe Badu,
Maybe,
maybe.
yeah.
I mean, or Habermas, maybe. He's like 90 something now, so he's maybe
So he's
him.
the world's leading philosopher,
One of those three. Agamben, maybe. Right?
and
Maybe.
he's relatively young, right? He's in his 50s.
No, Agamben's in
No,
his
no,
late
no, no.
70s.
Zizek.
No, Slavoj just turned. He's
Oh, I
71.
was giving him credit, so I
I know.
thought he
No,
was younger than he is.
because his first book came out in English when he was 40, so he was
Oh,
already
okay,
pretty old.
got it. Slavoj, yeah. And then let's see, yeah. So then I graduated in 2012, moved to Los Angeles.
2012, Rachel, was it really that long ago?
No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. That's when I that's when I
When you
graduated high
started,
school.
right?
No, that's when I started. 2016.
Okay, good. That
Time is just I have no. I mean, it's September now. What? No, no, no. That would be insane. I haven't been back to Vermont since I graduated, but I really, really need to, and I want to.
Yeah, you should come back.
Hopefully in December I'll be able to get back to the East Coast and then take a trip up to Vermont. But like, what has it in the film department? Like, I think now you do have to take a production class. I think I was before we were recording. I was saying that I've never taken. I was a film major, but I never took a production class. And it probably would have been good, to like learn the basics. Even though I knew from the beginning that like I was never going to do anything with the actual media. If I was going to be involved in any part of the process, it would be the writing part.
Right, but don't you think? Like, I don't know anything about.
You need to know, but it's good to know.
Right, like it has even helped me because I'm teaching these online things, and I put on videos on YouTube about different things, like you're doing with this, and I edit them together. And if I didn't, I'd like knowing that. So if I had a production class, I'd be able to.
Right, like very basic things where like it would have been nice to know, and then it kind of just helps you understand too, like what I mean. Then I made my own movie, but I wasn't. We were lucky to have a DP, and she had all the equipment and everything, so I know what wide shot is, and I could tell you a jump cut and all that, but I like, a 16 millimeter, even like that kind of stuff. I'm like, what is like good to know also, because like how film has shifted, from being shot on film to digital. Like that's important to know. Didn't know anything about that. And then
Right.
But I feel like I got so lucky because so many other people who studied film like don't really, they might take like one theory class, like just as sort of a basics, like they're the opposite. A lot more schools I think are production based. So I was very lucky to have that education.
Yeah, I really think it's important. We have this guy that graduated right when we got here, so he was like 2004. He worked as he just directed his first feature, and he thought that his theory background really shaped how he conceived of the film, So
right. I think it gives you a much deeper understanding and appreciation for what actually goes into the whole art form, as opposed to just like, all right, you're watching this 2 hours on your screen and here it is. But there's so much more that goes into it.
Right. The significance of it. Right.
Right. And the importance of like because you talk about mise en scène in your classes, and you talked about, like basic sort of editing and filmic things, but you don't go into the sort of like, here's a director of production, like what is a best boy,
right?
Like those kinds of, when you even look at the credit, I think that's what's crazy too, is like you look at the credits of a film, even if it's as Marvel credit movies, they're always like, we employed 10,000 people, but like even a smaller film, like you look at every single person and every single piece that went into it, and just like being around that sort of environment in Los Angeles, you realize like there's actors and directors and all, but there's also I'm a grip and a sound editor, and there's all these things that even just like an introduction to film production, sort of, even if you don't actually do much, but just to like learn how a set works and learn how a film learn maybe you make your own lighting thing or whatever. But oh well, I think I did okay without
you did great.
Thank you. So we've been talking for quite a bit, so we can any final thoughts before we'll catch up offline after I end this, but any final thoughts for the listeners? It was so great to talk to you too. I just miss having I toyed with grad school for a while. I didn't get in. Part of the problem was I didn't want to leave Los Angeles and the
Yeah,
schools
that's
here
a
are,
yeah.
the creme de la creme. And the more I think about it too, I'm like, the things that I really liked about academic learning and about, even teaching as a TA, I think I can incorporate like into my own writing and into my
Yeah.
own sort of personal stuff, and without the crippling debt that comes,
Yeah.
and also just like, then, if I did make it through and get my PhD and everything, like I still want to stay in Los Angeles primarily, or have control over where I live. And a big part of then, once you become professors, you don't have any
You
control
have
over
no
that.
control, right?
And it would have been such a long journey. And I think, everything happens for a reason. So
right.
I'm glad that I didn't get in, but I am, if now that everything's online too, I'm hoping like the online class I took was so great and probably wouldn't have happened before COVID. So there are some good things where, because the class, it had people from like all over the country. So that was really cool. It wasn't just like a Los Angeles class. And so you're teaching, you are teaching this semester, you're doing
online.
just online.
Yeah.
And anything else in the works? Any new books? Any new projects?
Yeah, actually, I'm writing this book right now it's called The Racist Fantasy. So it's about it's about psychoanalysis, and racism. And
are you going to talk about Get Out?
Looking at the way a certain kind of fantasy is deployed within racism.
Are you going to talk about Get Out in that?
That's a good question. I part of the thing, I don't think I am, because for the reason you just said, like it's kind of obvious, right? Like,
there's not a lot to unpack. It's kind of just, it is what it is. But there's definitely a lot of stuff that's come out recently that you could use. Have you seen like the new Watchmen show is great, and that totally, I don't know if you've seen like the original movie, but it's like so much better. And
I know, I heard that. Yeah.
And it plays a lot with race. It revisits the Tulsa massacres and sort of like the generational trauma of race. Dr. Manhattan is a person of color. Very great. So, I mean, that's something also to explore. That was J.J. Abrams, but that has a lot to do with sort of like race and fantasy and especially like the superhero, like the masks, because it is like contemporary, but there's a lot of like racial stuff in it. So you should check that out. Cool. Well, we'll keep an eye out for it whenever it comes out soon. Thank you so much, Todd. It was so great to talk to you. To everyone listening, make sure you like, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And until then, stay reading, everybody. Bye.